Hello, I'm John Leyzorek in West Virginia. I'm co-founder of a plan and an organization called Tactical Civics, which I think in all seriousness is the last best hope for saving our republic and the freedom and rule of law which it was founded to secure. Large parts of our country are now in various types and styles of lockdown. Many or most businesses are closed by government order. Gatherings are prohibited. In my county, I cannot now go into my courthouse to consult my public records. Some places are using this as an excuse to try to further invade firearms rights, while others are supporting self-defense by recognizing firearms and ammunition sellers as essential services. All this is justified as being necessary to slow the spread of the new virus, because if the number of people sick at once peaks too high, there may be a shortage of facilities to care for the small percentage who are sick enough to need hospital care, and some of them, and others needing the same intensive care facilities for other reasons, will die. And I feel strongly that even draconian restrictive public health measures are, when really necessary, a vital part of why we have government at all, so that when the whole population has to respond as one to keep us safe, we can effectively do so. But we run into a serious problem in judging whether these restrictions are legitimate and necessary, or are a devious power grab. The data needed to judge exactly how bad this might get will not be available until it's too late to make the best use of it. So, the actions we are asked or ordered to take, if they are to be effective against the worst possibilities, must be taken on faith. But faith in our government at all levels, as well as in the news media that used to give us facts on which to draw our own conclusions, faith is exactly what we do not have, because for generations they have lied to us, caged us, robbed us, murdered us, and sold us down the river in 1,000 ways. They have forfeited our faith, and we have lost a vital tool for concerted response to real threats. Cooperation, of course, is as old as man. Older because we see packs of wolves cooperate in the hunt, and bison cooperating against them to shield their calves. Humans cooperating learn the value of leadership. If one of the group can better direct the hunters from a viewpoint standing on a big rock or up in a tree, or an old hunter can teach at the fireside from his experience how to bring home more meat and fewer dead hunters. And a small group does not take long to figure out if the guy in the tree or home by the fire is really helping or just keeping his own hind end safe, and sweet-talking the women back home while others do the work. A small group quickly learns who are the good leaders and who are parasites, and chooses the good ones. We tend to forget this today when kingship is thought of as always going from father to son or daughter, and politicians seem to be and surely think of themselves as being part of an untouchable elite. But only 1,000 years ago, where we find the roots of much of that part of our fundamental law that does not come straight from the Bible, our forebears in what is now England still chose their kings. And 200 years ago, George Washington wanted nothing more than to get back to his farm. Today's latest crisis of faith follows right on the heels of a fall and winter of assaults by many of our governments on fundamental rights that did not have the obvious excuses provided by the virus. And those assaults served as a salutary wake-up call, and thousands of people all over the country came out to meetings, demanded action from their local governments to protect their rights, and up until the recent prohibition of gatherings were carrying on with local organization in the form of militia musters. The Sanctuary County movement that raced across the country was a response to that call, an impressive local political response to those criminal attacks on our natural rights, especially on the right of self-defense and on the essential included right to possess effective tools for the purpose. But we do need to ask what exactly are sanctuaries. They are clearly directed against assaults on the Second Amendment to our federal Constitution, but they address only the first part of its second clause, quote, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, unquote. But are guns or arms really what the fuss is all about? And will resolving on being a sanctuary do any more than make us feel good and make our local politicians look good? Remember, we established for all time in our Declaration of Independence that legitimate government exists for no other purpose than to secure our rights. Can sanctuary or musters actually secure these God-given, natural human rights, which we fought a revolution to seize and wrote a constitution to secure? For a little background, and without apology to the atheist, let us take note that legitimate human law must always and only be the codified application to specific situations of the law of God. For example, God is the giver of life, therefore no man has the right to take that gift, except as permitted under that law. Self-defense clearly derives from that gift, since to let it slip away undefended scorns the giver. Our life's labor creates property, therefore our right to property derives from our ownership of our own lives. Of course, both self-defense and property rights are explicitly recognized in the Bible and in nearly all human law, as well as being capable of being inferred. Individual freedom of action and of conscience are also parts of the law of God, as illustrated incessantly in Scripture, starting all the way back in the second chapter of Genesis with Eve's and then Adam's rebellion. Our Constitution is the highest human law of our republic, is written to put into practice the principles of the Declaration, and clearly subserves divine law. It explicitly states that, quote, "This Constitution and laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land." As Chief Justice John Marshall wrote very early, a law repugnant to the Constitution is void. We, the people, do three vital things in this supreme law. First, we place explicit limits on the powers that our servants, fallen men like ourselves, may exercise over us, their sovereigns. Second, we forbid it to infringe on inherent rights. And thirdly, in Amendment 10, we reserve to ourselves every power that can be imagined other than those 17 which we specifically enumerate to the servants in Article 1 and a few more in Articles 2 and 3. So, obeying the law has a rather different meaning for us Americans than it does for people living under a king or in a, quote, in what's called a positive law country. Yes, we are bound by civil and criminal laws against particular behaviors, but we also have actual inherent powers and mandatory duties as self-governing people. We are taught in school about separation of powers, about checks and balances built into our system of government, but we are taught to believe that this principle runs no farther than the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. But that omits the most important part by far. A perceptive person might observe, how are these branches whose self-interests so dangerously coincide to be kept honest in the long run without a police branch? Our founders were well aware of this issue. Remember that they defined legitimate government as the property and servant of the people. From one of its first cases, styled Chisholm versus Georgia, the U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged that we the people are collectively the sovereign in our system of government. But most important, our founders knew that no institution will ever police itself. Their necessary and inspired solution, specified in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, is that as militia, we, the people, are ourselves to execute the laws of the Union. You could call it the Constitution's immune system. Our Constitution requires in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16, that the servant government must organize, arm, train, and appoint officers to the militia. This ensures that militia is recognized as legitimate, that its effectiveness can be relied on, that it can be summoned to needs outside its own immediate community, and that it is clearly coordinated with the court system, while retaining its station as superior to the official apparatus, because it is the whole people. But since the end of Lincoln's War, we, the people, have allowed our state and federal governments to become lazy and arrogant, and to utterly neglect to provide for militia as we require in that highest law. Far worse, our rogue servants have tried to destroy the sovereign power of the people in militia by redefining it and limiting our access to its essential tools. So, have our lawless servants boxed us in, stolen not only our rights but our sovereign power as militia, leaving slavery or insurrection as our only options? Emphatically, no. Our Declaration of Independence, the first organic law of our republic, in which we set forth for all time the principles of legitimate government, catalogues the crimes of King George II, the poster child of illegitimate government. Among these are, quote, "He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected," now listen carefully, "whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise." End quote. Unquestionably, the people's delegation of power or duty to a servant who then refuses to properly exercise it does not and cannot annihilate that duty or power. It returns to we the people to delegate to a more trusty servant or to exercise ourselves. Sanctuary resolutions are a well-intended but weak-kneed borrowing from the lawless left, and no militia resolution has, to my knowledge, yet led to actual establishment of a constitutional militia. Since the federal and state palaces have slipped their leashes, a mere resolution is no solution. It is not enough to merely resolve that a certain lawless law will not run in one's county, or to declare a sanctuary where we will try to hide from it. Tactical Civics is the name of the responsible new way of life being promulgated by America Again Trust, a member organization which has for the past decade built and refined a comprehensive, lawful, peaceful action plan to restore our republic, rule of law, and American liberty. A key element of this plan is restoring the law enforcement element of our republic's original design, our constitutional militia, in every state. Everyone is perhaps most familiar with the fighting side of militia, although most established groups actually spend most of their energy providing a wide range of community services, as well, such as disaster response and many types of community assistance. But militia's crucial and constitutional law enforcement role has been in total eclipse. This is partly because power-hungry politicians have refused to provide mandatory official support and recognition, partly because of ignorance of the other ancient pre-constitutional law enforcement organ native to our common law heritage, the grand jury. With roots over 1,000 years old, grand jury is not supposed to be the lapdog or rubber stamp of prosecutors and judges. As U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia explained in the case U.S. v. Williams in 1992, the grand jury is we the people ourselves, empaneled by a court or sheriff but completely outside their control, by design. The grand jury has the authority to investigate any wrongdoing in its jurisdiction, to examine records, summon witnesses by subpoena, issue search and arrest warrants, to seize evidence or suspects, and hand down felony indictments. Drawing on the people's intimate knowledge of their own community, and with its total independence of and superior authority to the servant government, the grand jury is the American people's ideal and natural process to uncover official lawlessness and corruption even in judges, prosecutors, and sheriffs. And as embodying the power of law and truth, it is the perfect and necessary partner to the armed power of militia. A grand jury, even if it knows its full power and duty, cannot reach official corruption or organized crime if it has only the often political, career-protecting paid police agencies to execute its warrants. And militia, however well trained and armed, cannot lawfully stop crime or bring criminals to trial without evidence and formal charge. Our founders not only defined government's legitimacy as deriving from its protection of our rights, they gave us the tools and the duty to keep it on the job and within bounds. Hiding in a sanctuary is for medieval serfs. It is craven and futile. Tactical Civics has developed a constitutional rights protection and militia establishment ordinance that can bring this partnership to any independent community, county, or county equivalent. We have given the name American Militia 2.0 to constitutional militia co-deployed with an educated, briefed, supported grand jury, not merely to supplement the effectiveness of existing police, sheriffs, and emergency management units. The restored militias of America's counties will secure the rights of citizens by enforcing our federal and state constitutions and all laws made in pursuance thereof, even where paid police agencies are unable or unwilling to do so. Right now, our padded cage is suddenly being tightened by a whole new raft of restrictions, some presented as having a necessary and rational basis, but many totally off the wall, like a shutdown of all businesses in Pennsylvania, not just those where large numbers of people gather, or prohibition of carrying firearms in a South Carolina county, as if the deadly virus breeds in gun barrels. Just last fall and winter, huge numbers of people rose in search of a way to save the rule of law and their own freedom, goaded by attacks on their rights that were lawless and outrageous, but pretty narrowly focused on guns. Now everything is under attack. the right to assemble, your employment, and the right to make a living in your own business. Under attack either directly from the federal level or based on so-called information pushed and supported from there. We at Tactical Civics see what you might call an exploding market for local self-determination, for local self-reliance as well as self-defense. Tactical Civics went into the counties in response to the gun grabs to teach Americans how to take America back, county by county, when our state governments and federal government have slipped their constitutional leash. The same strategy applies to the new assaults. Here are a few examples of how it can work. Let us say that in your home state, all restaurants have now been closed by order of the governor, or all businesses, or firearms are banned, as I mentioned, just happened in Saluda County, South Carolina. Let us say that you have a restaurant that has some sense and wants to protect public health in case the virus does not turn out to be a bad one, but does not want to go out of business and deprive their patrons of a valued service and their employees of jobs. So, the owner talks to a local doctor and to the local health department, and together they decide that increasing table spacing, ramping up the ventilation, or maybe setting up tables outside in the fresh air will provide a reasonable degree of safety for people who want to make their own decision to eat a meal there. Or let's say your Chamber of Commerce gets together with that doctor or another doctor and your health department and decides that a lot of very important local businesses, the machine and welding shops, service garages and gas stations, never have concentrations of people in them, and so can keep contributing to the safety and productivity of your community without endangering anyone. And the guns, we don't have to give that lunacy any thought. So, if your county has adopted our ordinance to secure constitutional rights and established militia, then freedom and prudence become enforceable against mindless, one-size-fits-all hysterical totalitarianism in your county. And we are not talking about nor advocating violent confrontations, only about localities standing for the law and common sense by the procedures set forth by our founders. If state or federal government actually sends agents to enforce orders that break the law, your alert and connected militia will know they are coming. Every government employee is sworn to uphold the same Constitution that we hold so dear. And I will tell you that they are almost certain to be relieved to be told that they will simply not be given the opportunity to break that oath, and a way for them to stand down will be worked out between them and your sober, recognized, lawful, connected citizen militia. In the unlikely event that they are true outlaws, with no loyalty to oath or law, then they may have to be dealt with accordingly. But one way or another, law and peace will be kept in your community, with freedom. When the next county over sees what you have, I bet they will want some too. And so freedom and common sense and rule of law will begin to spread again like the green grass now appearing as a blessing after winter. We hear that the left sees crises as opportunities. Maybe they're right about that. We would never intentionally create one. But let us see if we can use theirs. There's much more to this new way of life called tactical civics, breaking Congress into small districts as the founders intended, bringing Congress home and under our immediate supervision, the indictment engine to stop government law-breaking before it starts, John Guandolo's anti-jihad courses, and 18 draconian reform laws to be rolled out over decades to restore all that we the people have lost to lawless servants. At this writing, we have over 175 chapters of Tactical Civics, ready and willing to work with militia groups, sheriffs, county governments, and with local gun dealers and shooting ranges to bring new security, restored freedom, even a new healthful outlet and social glue for all Americans. Tactical Civics is here to help, but the first step back to constitutional freedom is up to you and your community. Talk to us. You can be Americans again.